another edition of the VoiceOfWrestling.com and the Virtual Sports Network wrestling podcast. I'm Rich Craich alongside, as always, Joe Lanz, and we have another very special guest. But first off, Joe, how's everything going? Been a week since we've done an interview.
Yeah, everything's great. We had Gabe Sapolsky on. Actually, I think it was a week ago today, so It's been 1 week. And today we've got Reed Bentley, and he's got a show coming up Saturday, October 27th. That's 2 turntables and a wrestling ring, and that's SOR Class Wars Wrestling, and that's going to be in Lafayette, Indiana, at the county fairgrounds. And Reed, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Glad to be on with you guys today.
Well, we're pleased to have you on. I think first, there may be some listeners who may not be familiar with you, so why don't you give us your background? When did you start in wrestling, and who did you train with, and who have you worked for?
Started out in wrestling, getting trained in late 2009. Started out with Cash Flow of IWA Mid-South and JCW fame. Did my basics with him and started wrestling in early mid-2010. Just kind of going wherever I could, getting booked wherever I could. And it's been pretty good since then. I've trained with a lot of different guys. I didn't, just stop after my initial training. I've done seminars with Hero, BJ Whitmer, DJ Hyde, Drake Younger, all kinds of guys like that. So I'm always looking to learn something new and keep expanding what I'm doing.
What kind of got you into wanting to become a wrestler? I mean, a lot of fans, did it start from kind of fandom, or was it something that what kind of got you into that level? I mean, was it, real sports that you had done, or not real sports in that sense, but had you done, football and stuff and sort of transition? What was the reason you became a wrestler?
Well, I'd always been a huge fan growing up, so it was definitely, I watched it on TV, and I knew from a pretty young age, that's what I want to do with my life. That's what I want to grow up to do. I want that to be my career. And I've always been involved in martial arts. That was the closest thing I could find to pro wrestling. So I've done taekwondo and jiu-jitsu pretty much my entire life, different martial arts here and there. Because in Kentucky, at least, there's an athletic commission, and it's really, you can't do anything in a wrestling ring until you're 18. And frankly, all the shows and promotions that run in Kentucky are just terrible. So it wasn't exactly the best growing up to try and break in. But there's like one or two, there's some exceptions, so I won't, cover the entire state with the Iron Curtain, but there's a couple of redeeming places.
How'd you get hooked up with the Class Wars guys?
I met Trip Cassidy, who was the very first student of Billy Rock, who runs the School of Rock, in probably August of 2010. We were working a show in Charlestown, Indiana. He had just started wrestling, I think, just started touring around. He was under a mask at that point. His name was Akira Tatsu. He'd probably not be too happy with me putting that out there, but that was Trip Cassidy. And just hit it off. He was a really cool guy. I was enjoying IPW at the time, Insanity Pro in Indianapolis, and that's where Billy did a lot of his pretty much his only wrestling at that point was with IPW. All the students were on the pre-show, and when Tripp got called up to the main card for the very first time, they asked him who he wanted to work, and he got up with me, and we had a match in December of 2010. That was my very first match ever for IPW, neither of which are on camera, either one of our singles matches. Neither one have managed to be caught on tape.
Yeah, the School of Rock, they have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/School of Rock Wrestling. That's Rock without a K. That's just R-O-C, School of Rock Wrestling on YouTube. Now, they're kind of an interesting promotion. They do things a little different. I was checking out the YouTube channel earlier. What's kind of the concept of that promotion, and if you want to talk to people through that?
The deal with Class Wars is we are kind of an inside look, I would like to think of at wrestling. It's in the warehouse, in the School of Rock is where everything is filmed. If there's a problem amongst people in the school, if there's anything going on, that's where it's settled out. That's where the training actually goes on. That's where everything happens right there in that building. And it's really just kind of a different approach on wrestling, I like to think, because there's been other promotions in the past that have done shows without crowds. But ours is actually, a ground floor look, almost like a Fight Club type approach to wrestling.
Yeah, I thought that was something. Oh no,
go ahead, Rich.
Oh yeah, there was something I thought was really interesting. The approach, because a lot of indies tend to kind of emulate or try to just be sort of the same, and I like that you guys sort of took a different angle on it and do something differently. Do you know who came up with the concept, or has that sort of been something that's evolved over time to get to where you guys are with that kind of the no crowd warehouse, sort of in a sense kind of a reality show, but not really in that sort of sense. How did that kind of grow?
Everything started out, Billy wanted to kind of give all of his students, I'm not trained by Billy. Everyone associates me because I've known all the School of Rock kids so long. We always do the same shows together, travel to the same places. So I'm kind of the redheaded stepchild of Billy Rock. But he wanted to give me and all of his kids a place to kind of showcase what we could do. So he got up with Tom Green, who is kind of the inner workings, the Wizard of Oz mastermind behind the scenes, who does all the production, all that stuff, and they kind of formulated this idea, this concept of what they wanted out of Class Wars.
Kind of quick question. In terms of when you started kind of getting into wrestling and stuff, who was people that you sort of looked up to, or what were you kind of watching at the time that really kind of sparked your interest and said, yeah, because you had mentioned as a kid, you said, yeah, that's what I want my career to be. Was there anyone in particular, or was it maybe total organizations, or what was kind of who was your sort of inspiration?
Well, being from the South, I was much more of a WCW rather than a WWF guy, so Sting was my childhood hero, And WWF-wise, I still watched it. I watched everything I could, any kind of wrestling, no matter how old, new, good, bad it was, I would watch anything. My WWF guy was Shawn Michaels, and my WCW guy was Sting. And then as I started to kind of get older, right around, like the buying out of WCW, ECW, and the advent of TNA, Ring of Honor, all that stuff, that's when I really started finding out about indie promotions and started following a lot of that, following Ring of Honor, Chikara, PWG, Mid-South, all that stuff, back in the early 2000s.
And I'll kind of go into your training a little bit, kind of going back to that. A lot of people mentioned that that first sort of day of training. A lot of people, I know, I forgot the exact stat, but that just tons of people quit. I mean, I think like 75% are done after that first day. Kind of describe that first day for someone who hasn't been in that sort of wrestling school atmosphere.
The first day of any kind of training with wrestling, I would say almost universally, no matter who you're training with, is kind of, like you said, it's a weeding out. You're going to be bumping a lot. You're going to be working muscles that you haven't worked before. You're going to be taking a lot of falls and different stuff. And one of the things training with Cash is I learned how to take chops really quick, because if anyone's ever watched Cash Flow wrestle before, he has the heaviest hands. They're like frying pans. And I actually wrestled him once for his promotion, APW, in Kentucky, and I think 17 were caught on camera, 17 chops that I took, and it was somewhere over the 20 mark. We just missed a few of them on camera. So that was one of the first things, learning how to take a chop, learning how to fall and not kill myself.
It's a process, though, right? I mean, you say you're still taking seminars, and you never really stop learning how to wrestle.
Yeah, definitely. I always looked up to, Chris Jericho as a kid, and that was one of the things that I always admired about him. He talks about in both his books is his continual training. He had been wrestling for years upon years upon years before he ever really did much in the States. He'd been to Mexico, been to Japan, trained with, guy after guy, and that's kind of the approach that I've always wanted to take. I never wanted to stop learning. I still do anything I can. I was lucky enough before Hero got signed to do 2 seminars and like a one-on-one with him in Florida, and just, as many seminars, whether it's, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, anywhere I can, to just pick something up, because you can learn something different from everyone.
What was it like working with Chris Hero? Obviously, it was a positive experience, or you wouldn't have brought it up a couple of times. Compared to some of the other seminars you've taken, what did you get from Chris Hero that you might not have gotten from somebody else?
Hero has like a really grassroots approach, I would want to say, because coming up where he did in Mid-South, he has a very basic, chain wrestling oriented approach to everything. And he was one of my guys. You know, Hero was the guy I always watched, the guy I always admired on the indies. So when I finally got into the business and got to meet him, train with him, that was, you know, a huge thing for me. That was, you know, one of those things I always look forward to, you know, like, man, I really hope I get to meet him one day. I hope I get to wrestle him. I hope I get to, you know, learn from him, do something like that. So unfortunately, I never got to wrestle Hero, but I did get to learn from him, definitely, especially, you know, in Florida. It was an almost one-on-one type situation. So it was really, you know, breaking down what I did wrong, what I did right, and kind of examining it. It was definitely eye-opening.
You had mentioned B.J. Whitmer, too. Was that in Cincinnati for Heartland?
Yeah, that was at HWA. I've done a Nigel Mcguinness, B.J. Whitmer, and D.J. Hyde, all three there at HWA. They are always bringing in guys for their students and for anyone who wants to come. You know, experience or not, can get in there and learn.
Oh, I didn't even realize Nigel Mcguinness was still associated with those guys over there.
It was on his farewell tour at the end of the year.
Okay.
Back for one final match with Chad Collier. It was the first match Collier had in the States in, I think, almost a year.
You know, as far as kind of your style, you've sort of developed it, you know, over time. Who would you kind of best describe for maybe someone that hasn't seen you or hasn't seen the YouTube videos? If any kind of the popular wrestlers or anybody that they know, if you're kind of a hybrid of a few or sort of your kind of style in the basic sense.
It definitely strike heavy, strike oriented. I have, you know, a martial arts background. That's one of my favorite styles of wrestling, you know, watching Pearl Risu and King's Road style wrestling, things like that. So, I like throws and strikes, things like that. That's what you're going to see a lot of in my matches. I definitely don't think there's any one person I could, you know, compare myself to, because I have, you know, a wrestler blueprint. I pull what I can from everyone and try and make it something of my own. I'm a little bit more of not a complete throwback on Class Wars. I like to call me the grinder, because I'm a little bit more basic than, you know, the average guy that you're going to see on the indies these days.
Yeah, the last match that they put up on the YouTube, the School of Rock Wrestling, it was you and Trip Cassidy against Heidi Lovelace and Dale Patrick. It was a tag team match, and you guys shot an angle at the end. You want to tell us about that?
At the end of the tag match?
Yeah.
Big Sue Jackson?
That's it.
Big Sue Jackson is on his way back. He will be returning soon. Myself and Trip Cassidy very excited about that. You know, he is the third of our faction of the league, so we definitely need our big, you know, monster. He's our muscle, so definitely a guy we need back as soon as possible.
And that's, from what I understand, exclusive information to this podcast that you guys will be working in a trios match on that October 27th, 2 turntables in a wrestling ring, Lafayette, Indiana, at the county fairgrounds. So everyone should check out that match on YouTube and see how that all came together.
Yeah, definitely. We don't have any idea as of yet who our opponents are going to be, but that will be a rarity. You actually get to see a trios style match with all 3 members of the league involved. Big Sue's back and healthy now, so definitely be something that anyone in the area should make it out to. Billy's got a lot of ideas, a lot of good stuff coming from the School of Rock here in the next few months.
As a worker, how does kind of developing a relationship with those guys, as you sort of mentioned, maybe we'll start kind of in the ring. How good is it to know that you said, you know, you've worked with these guys for a long time? How easy does that make the transition then when you face, you know, different guys or when you go to different organizations and stuff to have, you know, at least a tag team partner or, you know, a faction of guys that you're familiar with or know or have kind of went through the ranks with?
It definitely helps. It's always good to have people to travel on the road with, you know, to go around with. It's a lot easier to, you know, talk to a promoter and say, you know, I've got 5 guys coming from Indiana to get on to a show rather than pay one guy to come from Indiana. You know, it's a lot easier to carpool, go to different shows, and like you mentioned, having both, you know, I tagged with Trip before we formed the league with Sue, so it's good to have, you know, versatility. I can wrestle singles, I can do a tag, a trio, you know, and I've wrestled with and wrestled against almost everyone at this point who's come through the School of Rock. So it's nice being familiar with all those guys. It makes everything a lot easier.
As far as kind of social media, and it's something that I've noticed, I know Tom especially, kind of the back end producer, he's kind of huge on that. And I know I've seen all the wrestlers, there's always the Twitter handles under there and all that. How do you personally use social media to kind of promote yourself, as an indie wrestler?
I definitely just use it as a very straight to the point approach. I put out where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be doing, what's going on with me, and I try and keep everything as updated as possible. I have a webmaster who runs my website and all kinds of different stuff like that. Nick Manawa, he's a great guy, one of my best friends. He keeps all that stuff as up to date as possible. My actual Twitter and everything like that is run straight from me, so it's really easy these days to communicate straight to fans. You can see, you'll know who's going to be at the show that night. This person said, "Oh, I want a T-shirt, I want a button, I want a picture." It makes the whole process just a lot easier and a lot easier to get yourself, familiar with the fans with anywhere you're going.
If people want to follow you, what is your Twitter account?
Twitter is at the Reed Bentley. That's pretty much every social network. It's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Words with Friends, Voxer. Everything is all the Reed Bentley.
And they can find your website through there too.
Yeah, that's thereedbentley.weebly.com.
You keep it nice and simple.
Yeah, very simple.
Got to keep it consistent, though. How important do you think that is, really, of a set? Because, that's something that you guys have that, indie wrestlers of 10 years ago didn't have. How do you think that benefits you personally?
Oh, it's definitely very beneficial. Like you said, 10 years ago, most people had 56K, and they're downloading, indie shows off of SoulSeek, and using Hotmail. So, it's definitely living in a day like today where, it makes us more accessible. I don't think, accessible in a bad way. I think definitely in a good, interacting with, wrestlers when you're a fan. I can put out, this is the merchandise I have. This is where I'm going to be. This is what I'm doing. This is a promo that I just filmed. This is a video. This is my web show. There's just, umpteen ways to really get yourself out there and to, it really helps you out too personally, not just getting over with the fans, but, it helps me personally, just staying in touch and staying in contact.
Do you have any horror stories
from the wrestling world?
I'm sorry about that. Did you have any horror stories from the road? Any nightmare promoters or road trips from hell? Anything fun you want to share with the fans?
Nothing too crazy. I've been fairly lucky on the road, considering I put 80,000 miles on my car, in less than 3 years of business. So, I've been fairly lucky. I was on my way to IWA Mid-South the first time I ever worked there. It was a tryout show back in 2010. I'd only been wrestling for, like 2 months at this point when I go to do this tryout show. And it was, just terrible weather, terrible road trip. I get pulled over in Indianapolis by an off-duty cop and given a ticket for following too closely behind him. And then he calls another officer off the ramp. So there's, 2 cops have me pulled over. They're berating me on the side of the road for driving unsafely. And all I was trying to do was just keep up with him and keep up with the flow of traffic. I didn't know what the speed limit was. There's 4 lanes of traffic. I can't see road signs. So it finally got to the point where I was just like, okay, well, either write me the ticket or let me go. I have places to be, and just had to get really snippy with them. But that's about the worst thing that I could really think of. I was almost shot once.
Well, that's pretty bad. I think that would count.
But that wasn't on the road. That was just at the very first wrestling show, if you really want to call it wrestling, that I ever worked. There was a guy in the parking lot who wasn't too happy with me and the things that I had said about him.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
In 2010, that is good. A little bit more of that. What did you kind of do to rile him up?
He was just your typical, inbred. Literally, he looked like something from The Hills Have Eyes. I didn't even really think I said anything that out of line. It was the first time I'd ever even set foot in front of a crowd. And I mean, his brother was a wrestler too, so he
should have understood the concept.
yeah, he was aware of how wrestling worked, but yeah, I guess I made him think it was, more than believable.
You really got yourself over on that first show then.
That's a good thing actually.
Yeah.
I mean, minus the almost getting shot part, but other than that, can you maybe describe an average week of you? Because I think that's one thing that a lot of people are really kind of fascinated with, is that sort of indie wrestler life. And what's kind of a normal week like in your life?
Usually I have the last couple of weeks because I've been pretty busy just with the summer months and everything, but normally I'm at HWA every Tuesday, which is in Hamilton, Ohio, and then Friday through Sunday pretty much on the road, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, at least, 2 or 3 days a week. So I try and make sure that I wrestle, as much as possible. Like this month so far, I think I have a calendar with everything on it here. Let me count it up. I think 10 times this month, and that's been a light month. So, 2 matches a week is normally, what I try and keep myself booked up with. I try and wrestle as much as possible because I really do. I still enjoy it. That's why I still do it. I want to be at wrestling shows. I want to be in that environment.
So pretty much every Friday and Saturday you find yourself booked. Now in your area of the country, are there a ton of Sunday shows you can get yourself on, or is that something that doesn't really happen in the Midwest?
Yeah, there's a lot of Sunday shows, more than you would think. There's a place right in the town that I live. I don't go there. It's not exactly the most reputable, fun place to go. But they run every single Sunday. There's a promotion in Illinois called IWAU, IWA Unlimited. They run every Wednesday and every Sunday. So they run twice a week in the same building. So.
Yeah, because that's something I've noticed over the last couple of years. It used to be just, Friday and Saturday. But lately, a lot of these groups have been running Sundays, which has to be great for you guys because, any opportunity to get in the ring is a good opportunity.
Yeah, I know guys who are nothing but 100% full-time wrestlers. That's all they do to make money and make their living. And they can easily work 6 days a week if they wanted to. Just around this area, there's places that run Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Monday is pretty much the only day, at least in the Midwest, that you're not going to find a wrestling show because nobody wants to go up against Raw.
Right.
I think one thing that's really interesting about that is you sort of mentioned as well that the people that are full-time, do you also work kind of part-time as well to try to supplement your income, or do you just wrestle full-time?
Yeah, I work 5 days a week. So, I'm working Monday through Friday, plus I'm on the road, 4 days a week most of the time. So, it's very, very hectic schedule, definitely, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Tell us more about the show in October 27th in Lafayette, Indiana. That's a ways off now. We're still talking about 2 months, but what do you know about the show, and why should people come out and see it?
I think a lot of people are going to be shocked. It's definitely the new class that's coming up with Billy right now is a really, really diverse class compared to everyone else who's graduated so far. It's the biggest class, too, that he's ever had. So it's definitely, you're going to see a lot of interesting characters, a lot of interesting guys who are, some of them have already worked a couple of spot shows here and there. So it's definitely going to be a new dynamic for the School of Rock. A lot of good new talent injected into the promotion.
All right, great. And then once again, maybe if you can just kind of tell people where they can sort of find you on social media, if they wanted to kind of talk to you, interact with you, or even, as you mentioned, say they're coming to the show, or just kind of say hi.
Anywhere you want to find me at: Facebook, Formspring, Twitter, Tumblr, Voxer, Words, Drawing, and Hanging with Friends. Everything. Anything that you have that is on your cell phone or your computer, I have an account for it, and it's the Reed Bentley.
And if somebody wants to book you, the same way?
Yeah, thereedbentley@gmail.com. That's for, promoters, interview requests, just like this, anything at all.
Our guest here, Reed Bentley, he is in this week's match, which they put up a free match every Wednesday. And the match is Reed Bentley and Trip Cassidy against Heidi Lovelace and Dale Patricks. And you can see the big angle they shot at the end with Big Sue Jackson. We're returning and joining Bentley and Cassidy in the league, which is
definitely. Like you just mentioned, every single Wednesday there's new content. So definitely subscribe to the SOR Class Wars YouTube channel, because all the way up until season 2 starts, which we don't have a definite date set, there is going to be new content every single Wednesday to keep people interested and keep you coming back until season 2 starts.
Especially if you're frustrated with TV wrestling right now. There's a lot of people who are frustrated with the national promotions. There's the SOR Class Wars, and there's a lot of other promotions too that they can find on YouTube if they're looking for an alternative, and this is definitely one of those alternatives.
We appreciate you coming on, and no, I definitely recommend people check out the Class Wars, because I think it's a good crop of young guys, and I really like the concept. I think it's wrestling TV, but it's a very different style of wrestling TV, and I think it's extremely entertaining. So it's really good stuff.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.
I read. Thanks
thank
a lot.
you.
I think the most interesting thing that I took from that is there's a lot of misconceptions from fans that these wrestlers train, they go to a school, they train for 6 months, they get out of the school, and boom, they're professional wrestlers. But he came at a sort of perspective of they're constantly learning. And he's somebody who's going to all these different training camps, and he's going to work with different people and see different styles, and you never stop learning how to wrestle. And that's what he had mentioned that he had gotten from the Chris Jericho book. Chris Jericho had gone all over the world and learned various styles, and these guys never stopped their training. So that was the most interesting thing that I think I got out of that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's essential too, because you really kind of develop different styles in that sense. Where he mentioned kind of doing work with B.J. Whitmer and Chris Hero. I mean, obviously you're going to learn different things from B.J. Whitmer than you're going to learn from Chris Hero, and different and that's what I really think is one of the best parts of kind of wrestling training. And one thing that you really get a lot of times when you watch real good developing indie talent is that you see that they can work those different styles, or in a match themselves they can. I mean, one guy to look at is Davey Richards, where in one match he can be a total striker, and then another one he can go a little more high flying and stuff, and it really adds to the effect that you don't. A lot of times you're not going to get that from kind of the mainstream sort of guys that are trained through FCW. They're taught that style, work this, do this. Whereas indie guys, and especially in Reed's sense as well, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to him, especially after watching a lot of his matches, is that he was real diverse in that sense. Where I thought that his style was awesome, and you can tell where he has little bits and pieces from the different people he sort of trained with.
Yeah, he's definitely not having the same match in IWA Mid-South that he's having for Class Wars. I mean, so you can see right there that there is some diversity there, and it's the right path to take. Like he said, they're constantly learning, and I think a lot of fans, they think these guys go to wrestling school for 6 months, and then and that's it, and then they're professional wrestlers, and that's that. But that's not the case, and I think he gave a real good perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of real quick thoughts before we kind of go, just maybe a little tag on the Raw 1000. Did you watch it? Any thoughts, prayers, hopes?
I did see it. I did see it, and it was mediocre at best. Now I understand it had a great rating, so and it better have with the way that they hyped it.
Right. Yeah, when you put every angle ever.
When you push that harder than any pay-per-view aside from WrestleMania that you're going to do. I think it all comes down to the angle, in the final 2 minutes, where with the CM Punk thing where he clotheslined The Rock and presumably turn heel, although there is some confusion on the internet over, what went down with that. But I think it's pretty obvious that it was a heel turn. I think that pretty much saved the show. The rest of it, they overhyped the amount of people that they were bringing back, because in reality, the only people they brought back, aside from The Rock and Lesnar, who were involved in current storylines anyway, I'm not sure if you can consider those guys quote unquote coming back, were the people involved in the Heath Slater angle who we had just seen, each week previous, and for about a split second you saw Roddy Piper, and for another split second, who else was in that segment with AJ?
You had
somebody in the hall. Oh, Jim Duggan was in the hallway.
Jim Duggan. You had Psycho Sid and.
Well, yeah, the Psycho Sid and those guys. Those were the guys who had beaten. Yeah. So they just brought those guys. Road Warrior Animal, Bob Backlund. But one thing that annoyed me about that, and I mentioned it on the Virtual Sports Network board, I hate the way they treated Piper on that show, and I hate the way that they use Piper most of the time. I mean, this is one of the most important people in the history of the company. One of the the building blocks really of what Vince McMahon built as the main foil to Hulk Hogan in 1985 through about 1986. That great heel mouthpiece and really a guy that helped Hogan get over. And they bring him back, and he's on screen for a split second with.
That was something I took away as well. I don't understand how Roddy Piper. I mean, I get that he's considered a quote unquote kind of a legend, but I don't think he's with the rest of those guys. Now I'm somebody who's not even a huge Roddy Piper fan in that sense, and I know I get a lot of getting a lot of arguments with that because I just. He's good, but I never thought he was, the top tier. But compared to, Psycho Sid and Ron Simmons and those sort of guys, he's on a different level. Of the guys that are coming back, he's not on Jim Duggan's level. He's not on, those guys' levels. And I hate that you see him for a split second, then he's gone.
Yeah,
I understand.
They treat him like they treat those guys. And, I'm someone who completely disagrees with you. I think, you look at the old Piper stuff, even go before 84 and 85, the stuff from Portland, the stuff from the Crockett stuff. I mean, his promos, this guy was state of the art in his. I mean, he is arguably the greatest heel promo of all time, and like I said, he is a big reason. Why the whole Rock and Wrestling thing took off, the early formation of the company, the early WrestleManias.
Yeah, WrestleMania 1 probably isn't what it was without him. I mean, you needed that sort of guy on the other side.
And for him to get lumped in with these other guys, I mean, not to take anything away from, your Bob Backlunds or your Warrior Animals or whatever, or your Ron Simmons, but I don't know. It rubs me the wrong way when they bring him in and just treat his character that way. It doesn't make sense to me. I think he should be held on a higher level than that. But what are you going to do? I guess it's a minor gripe because most of the people watching probably have no idea who he is.
Right,
and weren't even born the last time he wrestled a match.
And that's kind of what I was thinking. The back of that will be during Raw or during this is for Raw, so his big time in Raw was '96 and he's a commissioner or whatever. But to a different point though, if you're going to bring in those sort of legends and make it a legend sort of thing, then I do think he has to be on a higher level. And I thought the show was okay. It wasn't as great as I thought it was, and I didn't think it was as bad as I know some people are sort of mentioning or kind of putting down. I did like the CM Punk part. The thing that I kind of had to worry about, and the good thing though is they did build matches for the future, which is somebody there finally has realized it's a good idea actually, booking this stuff a little bit ahead of time. But I thought you could have given a lot more guys more rub. A guy like Dolph Ziggler in that sense, and I hate to kind of bring him up constantly, but there's guys those kind of second-tier guys that they didn't really get a benefit from rubbing elbows with the legends, with that you sort of wish you would have gotten. And in another sense, the Lesnar Triple H thing, I'm less and less interested in that.
Well, they actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to bring that up and I had forgotten about it, but they actually buried more of the young guys. They could have used this opportunity with all these eyeballs, and what happened to Damian Sandow? Buried by DX. What happened to Jinder Mahal and his band of geeks that he brought? They got destroyed by Kane and the Undertaker. So they buried a bunch of those guys, which is fine. I understand people want to see the Undertaker and Kane back together, and they get their big pop. People want to see DX, but you could have used some of those guys in that type of role, but at the same time, when you knew this was going to be the highest rated Raw in a long time, you could have put over somebody like Damian Sandow to all those fresh eyeballs. Or whoever. It didn't have to be Sandow. It could have been any one of those guys. I mean, you could have taken this opportunity to give Jinder Mahal or Tyler Rex or whoever some sort of a rub off of somebody here. I mean, why can't Damian Sandow leave X-Pac and Billy Gunn?
No.
What's the difference? Those guys aren't coming back anyway. They're not going to wrestle a match. I mean, he could have left those guys laying early, and then maybe the rest of DX gets their comeuppance later, or whatever it is. I'm by no means a booker, but it didn't make sense to me to bury all of the young guys on that night. You do have to have some of that. But, you could have helped out some of these guys and given a rub to some of these guys. It's only going to help you down the line. I mean, that part didn't make sense to me at all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's kind of my biggest gripe of the show that I think in total is that you finally got those new eyeballs and you really didn't – you created CM Punk, who already sort of is a star, and maybe some people now
you pushed
a little bit bigger, but
you created a new issue with Punk and the Rock, and they advanced the Brock Lesnar Triple H thing. But to me, I didn't – that segment didn't do much for me personally.
No, I hated it. I couldn't stand it.
I didn't hate it and I didn't love it. It just was kind of there. I mean, Heyman was great. Heyman is always great. I didn't like the fact that Triple H took Lesnar out and Lesnar was the one backing up the stage at the end. I mean, how is that any way to build the match? Lesnar should have leveled Triple H in that situation because you're paying to see Triple H get revenge on Lesnar. I mean, am I wrong in thinking that? Or
that's my thought.
I mean,
I thought Lesnar was the heel and Triple H was the face, but
I mean, I understand.
I guess not.
He broke Triple H's arm, the last time he was around, but they forgot about that pretty quickly. And it just, the whole thing with Lesnar showing ass in that situation didn't make a ton of sense to me. And I don't know, that segment it didn't do anything for me either way. But I think the final segment kind of saved the show from both an entertainment perspective and from a business perspective. I think there's some interesting ways they can go, but they won't, because what they're going to do is the old WWE standby tag team match where the partners don't get along with each other. I would bet my life that you're going to see John Cena and the Big Show against The Rock and CM Punk at some point between now and WrestleMania. Yeah. There's no question about it. And they constantly redo that same deal with the partners who don't get along, and I don't see why people are into that. I don't understand. It's been so overdone and done so many times, and I'm just sick of it. And I was thinking it was going to be Cena and The Rock against CM Punk and Big Show, but I'm curious if they're going to stick to the stip from last year's SummerSlam where they said Cena and The Rock were teaming for the first time and the only time, and it was never going to happen.
No, probably not.
So that's why I think they're going to go the other direction.
Yeah.
Since The Rock is going to have problems with Punk and Cena has issues with Big Show, you're going to have both teams where the partners don't get along. I mean, how played out is that at this point?
Is it as played out as the triple threat that we're going to probably see at SummerSlam of Big Show, Punk, and Cena?
I mean, that too. And Big Show in the main event picture in 2012. I mean, it just baffles me.
Yeah,
I don't understand. I don't understand his stupid punch to the head that he does. I don't get anything about him. I mean, that move and I'm going to rant again because
I have hated that move forever.
That move,
just do it right off the beginning. At the beginning.
Exactly. I understand.
Do it right when you walk in walk over the apron, into the ring, over the ropes, and do it.
And punch him in the head. I mean, the maneuver requires no. I understand this is goofy wrestling, and I understand I'm probably taking it way too seriously. But I mean, even in the context of goofy professional wrestling, that move has no psychology whatsoever. I mean, he ran into the ring on Monday and went after Cena and immediately proceeded to punch John Cena in the stomach. Why didn't he just punch John Cena in the head with his punch out of doom? It doesn't make any sense.
Finisher?
Yeah, why does he waste time wrestling these guys? Just punch them in the face and knock them out. I mean, it just totally lacks any logic. It bugs me. It just really bugs me. Besides the fact that, I mean, he's a guy who's been around since what? 1998? Is that when he came through the ring during that cage match?
96. Oh well, no, he's been in WWE since 1999.
In the 99? Okay, so he's been with the company.
It was St. Valentine's Day Massacre. It was like February 1999.
That's what it was. So he's been with the company since 1999, parts of 3 decades now. He gets pushed for a couple of months, then he gets treated like a comedy figure, then he gets treated like a jobber, then he gets the push because he's a killer again. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about you. I'm just sick of the guy.
I bet.
He seems like a nice guy. Good for him. I hope he makes millions and millions of dollars. But as far as does he entertain me? No, and he hasn't entertained me in years. And I think really
the last time would honestly be the Heyman. I think 2004, 2005. I think, or no, 2005. I think
the ECW thing.
Kind of the beginning of that. The sort of
that was
I lose track of it because I don't know if it was the straight ECW thing. It was, I think Lesnar and him had a match at Survivor Series of the year. Completely escapes me, and no, I think this is actually 3 years before the one you're talking about. But I think that more goes to the point that we can't even name which Big Show's killer.
Yeah, which push
storyline it is, because I think it's 2003 or 2004.
You're thinking
2005, 2006. I don't know. I think that's the larger point. Is what how many times are we going to have the
over and over and over? Yeah,
right.
And I mean, I was thinking of the WWE ECW one where when Van Dam and Sabu got caught with the drugs and they had to get the belt off Van Dam, and then Heyman did the screw job and screwed Van Dam over, and Big Show won the title, and then a few months later they did December to Dismember the Elimination Chamber, and that was Heyman's final straw, because if you recall, it was Heyman's idea to have the up-and-coming CM Punk immediately eliminate the Big Show, the old Heyman special,
Yeah.
And so you would guarantee a new champion. It would get CM Punk over, and McMahon put the nix on that because it was, Bobby Lashley, new superhero megastar, and that whole story. We could really get into another time when we have more time. That's a fascinating story for people who know the backstory on December to Dismember. But yeah, that was, one of the many Big Show. He's a
fateful pay-per-view that went 90 minutes too early. Had two actually advertised matches, and 9 days before another pay-per-view. Just a very, very weird situation. I think we should talk about that.
Essentially rewritten on the spot by Vince McMahon.
As guys were leaving the curtain, they're basically
Sabu from the match and put Bob Holly into the match instead, and it just an absolute disaster. We should definitely do a podcast on that. We could do 2 hours on that topic.
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of my more kind of interesting things. I've been reading a lot about it lately. I just kind of was looking some stuff up, and it's one of the more fascinating pay-per-views of all time. But I think that's about it for us today. You got anything else?
No, let's plug the SOR Class Wars again at SOR Class Wars on Twitter, youtube.com/School of Rock Wrestling. They have a new match every Wednesday night. Every Wednesday, not necessarily Wednesday night, but every Wednesday you can find a new match there, and it's Rock without the K. It's just ROC. And the match that was put up yesterday was our guest, Reed Bentley, and his partner, Trip Cassidy, against Heidi Lovelace and Dale Patricks. I watched it before we went on to record, and it's a good match, and they shot an angle at the end to set up the show. 2 turntables in a wrestling ring, Saturday, October 27th, Lafayette, Indiana, the Tippecanoe County Fairgrounds, and if anybody's in the area, they should check that out.
For sure. And then once again, for Joe Lanza, I'm Rich Craich, and this has been the VoiceOfWrestling.com and Virtual Sports Network Wrestling Podcast. Take care.